and welcome to another edition of Academic Matters. I'm Joe Marbach, the Provost at LaSalle University. In this first segment, I'm joined by Dr. Hank Bart, who is the Chairman of the Geology, Environmental Science, and Physics Department here at LaSalle. Hank, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
It's a great pleasure. I've been trying to get you on the program for a few years now, and
Yep.
finally our schedules
Our schedule
allow for
has
that.
meshed, finally.
Hank, tell the folks at home a little bit about your background, how you ended up here at LaSalle,
Sure.
and why you've stayed so long.
It's been
And
a long,
we're happy that you are here.
It's been a long time.
That came out a little bit.
I actually grew up in New York City, and I wound up going to school in Nebraska, where I got my PhD. Prior to that, I went to school in New York State. I went to University of Buffalo, where I got a master's degree in geology, and SUNY New Paltz, where I received a BS degree in earth science. But when I went to Nebraska, I was a geology major, and I studied in Wyoming and Colorado and Nebraska. I did a lot of work in the field, and upon graduating, I was looking for a position, and I noticed that there was a job available at LaSalle. So I wrote to the chair at the time, a fellow named George Stevens, and he wrote back and said, hey, how about if I meet you at a meeting in Miami? We were having a convention in Miami. So I had the good fortune to go to Miami, and I met George, and I liked him very much. And at that time, he said, we have a position open, and are you interested? I said, yeah, of course. So put my name in the hat, and a few weeks later, they hired me. So I was thrilled because I'm from the East Coast, and I wanted to move back to the East Coast so I could see my family. And I have a wife, and we had a baby in Nebraska, and we moved back to this area. And I had never really been in Philadelphia much until I got the job here.
Okay. And obviously it was a good fit.
It was a great fit. I remember the dean at that time, Brother Yu, said to me, now remember, Hank, this is probably not going to be your last job. Very often faculty members come here and move around and leave and go to a different school. I said, well, that's okay. I still want to try it. So I came here, and I've really enjoyed my stay. It's been wonderful.
Okay. Hank, in terms of geology, what are students studying? What's going on in the developments in the field? Is it all about oil and shale, or is there a lot more going on?
Today, it's a lot about oil and shale, a lot about energy. But we also do environmental issues as well. So I would say about half of my department, half of the students are environmental majors. And in our environmental program, we have 3 concentrations: biology, geology, and chemistry. So our students either study geology or chemistry or biology from an environmental perspective. But our program is unique from the perspective that we teach environment from the ground up, quite literally. There are many programs in environmental that leave the earth out pretty much. But environmental involves groundwater, minerals, waste handling, land use planning, earth hazards, earthquakes, volcanoes, landslides, flooding. These are all part of environmental and all part of geology. So it's a beautiful fit having both of those disciplines together. So our students in environmental study a lot of geology as well.
Okay. As a fact, don't we have a seismograph down in the science building?
I built that seismograph 35 years ago. And once computers became available, I interfaced it to a computer. So yeah, we receive earthquakes from around the world. It's pretty interesting. It's really a thrill to walk into my office and see the monitor, and an earthquake is coming in live. And it's quite exciting.
Yeah, we actually had our own experience here a couple of years ago. And did the thing go off the chart? Or?
Oh yeah, it did. You're talking about the quake in Virginia?
Yeah.
In Virginia, yeah. Well, that was about a 5.4 on the Richter scale, and it went off the chart. It was pretty close. I mean, that's not that far from us. And I remember it well because I was out golfing, and when I was finished golfing, I went to the pro shop. And the pro knows I'm a geologist. And he said, did you hear about the earthquake? And I said, what earthquake? In Virginia. I said, what? Virginia? No way. Yeah, sure. And I came down here, and there it was. So we could play it back anytime we want because we save those files.
Okay, great.
So it just doesn't come in live. It comes in live, but we save it on disk. So the hard drive has all these quakes stored.
Okay. Now, geology's got to be a study that takes students out into the field.
Yep.
What kind of field work placements and just regular course of studies? Where do you go? What do the students do?
In our freshman class in environmental, as an example, I take the students on trips that give them experience with groundwater issues, with waste handling. So we go to a trash esteem plant to see how energy is made from burning trash. I take them to the Wissahickon Creek, where we do studies of the groundwater, of the stream water in that area. We take them to the Philadelphia water treatment plant, where they show the students how they make water potable, that you can drink it. But our long trip in the fall is to Atlantic City, because I've developed a very good relationship with the Atlantic City Utilities Administration. And there they have the best stuff. They have wastewater treatment, which is kind of smelly. But they have a landfill, which we go into and on, that's great. They have wind generators. So we see the big wind generators. If you go to Atlantic City, you could see them when you're driving down the AC Expressway. We go right there, we stand right under them, and we learn about wind generation. And we also look at their solar farm. They have a solar farm. So they're generating electricity from solar, from wind as well. So it's a really great day. It is a day out of classes. I understand that. I'm sorry I'm even telling you this perhaps, but it's a great experience because the kids see everything. And they write that up as part of their projects.
Okay.
So that's one trip that we do. But we do a lot of trips dealing with coal and resources. We take them to the coal measures, the coal seam area up in Hazleton, PA, because we know a geologist there that lets us into a strip mine. The best trip that we had, one of the best trips, was to the Grand Canyon many years ago. We flew out to the Grand Canyon with about a dozen folks. And we landed in Phoenix and rented some vans. And we drove around Flagstaff, went to the Painted Desert, went to the Grand Canyon, went to Meteor Crater, which is incredible in Arizona, where a meteorite struck the Earth about 25,000 years ago. So that was the longest trip we ever had. Yeah.
Okay. Now, in addition to our local students, you've gotten some Brazilian students involved. We're participating in the Brazilian STEM project, where they're sending, I guess overall they want to send 100,000 students to the U.S. to study in the science, technology, or engineering or mathematics field. And a number of them are taking geology classes. Tell me about that experience with a new type of student.
Yeah, that's been fun. It's been interesting because of the international perspective. LaSalle took in about 20 students, and 10 of them became geology or environmental majors. So our classes have a lot of them in them. And they've learned English fairly well, and they can communicate. And sometimes I have some difficulty in some of my classes, but we work around that. But they bring a different perspective. And they're here to learn about energy and research and oil and gas, because they want to go back home and do that. That's one of the reasons why they're here.
Brazil has such abundant natural resources.
The natural resources are just unbelievable. And the students want to go into the energy industry, probably, or environmental. So some of them do want environmental. And there are some environmental problems in Brazil, as we have here, and they know about that. So they've been a very important asset to the department, I believe.
In terms of the environmental, is it trying to preserve the Amazon, or is it just dealing with large populations in relatively small areas?
It's large populations, but it's also the careless dumping of toxic materials, burying things in the past that there was no control. And we did the same thing, especially in South Jersey, in North Jersey. Companies would just take toxic waste and bury it in drums, not worrying about the consequences. And now those drums are now leaking. So now we have to remediate those areas. And a lot of our students wind up doing remediation work for groundwater companies. So that's part of the problem in Brazil as well. Around the world. One of the worst places is China.
Oh, yeah.
Where there are heavy metals, lead and mercury and things like this in groundwater. It's a very dangerous situation.
I know one area where there's going to be a huge growth in environmental safety because of the ongoing pollution, to try to modernize the society to deal with
Absolutely.
the burgeoning population, but then you just, where people walk around with masks on.
No, we're really happy the Brazilians came here. And we become very close over the last, since last August. Actually, we had 2 of them since last March, almost a whole year.
Yeah, where they spent most of that period learning English before the semester started in
They did.
September.
But when they were first, these 2 that were here since March, we had field trips in the spring last year, and they came on those trips with us.
They attended
I
with
tried to get
students.
them into our department that way.
Okay. Hank, we mentioned shale early on. It's big in Pennsylvania. Are we sending students there? Is there more interest because of shale?
Yeah, the shale oil has been an issue that has controversy, of course, because of the groundwater pollution potential. But yes, a lot of my students are thinking about that. In fact, we had one young lady who wound up working for Chesapeake Energy, and she worked out of Oklahoma City, where she was controlling 7 drilling bits in the oil area of Pennsylvania via computer from Oklahoma City. So they found jobs in that too, absolutely. It's a growing industry, and it has helped as far as supply is concerned. We're becoming one of the greatest gas producers in the nation. And of course, we do hydrofracturing for oil as well in the Bakken area of North Dakota. And that's making us one of the best oil producers.
Yeah, and I guess the real concern over what's happening with the groundwater, lots of controversy, as you pointed out, lots of study to go on, I guess, as we move forward.
There are a lot of studies going on, and fracking can be dangerous, and it can lead to pollution. If it's done properly, it's relatively safe, but everything has a cost-benefit consideration. And I always make that clear to my students. Nothing we do is free. There's a cost of going to the union to get a pretzel. You can be struck by a meteorite, but that's not likely to happen, so you do it. So fracking can be done carefully. If the wells are drilled properly, if they're grouted properly. One of my former students is chief geologist for Chevron Oil, and his company bought 100,000 acres of Marcellus. And I said to him, aren't you worried about, the controversy, the pollution potential? He says, no. He says, we do everything right.
Okay.
We're not worried about that.
Well, Hank, we'll have to leave it at there.
Okay.
Our time went quickly. I appreciate you coming on.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. My guest has been Dr. Hank Bart, I'll get it right.
You get
Dr.
it.
Hank Bart, who's the chair of the Geology, Environmental Studies, and Physics Department. Thanks, Hank. Come join us in our next segment when we'll be joined by Dr. Leanne Cardassiato, who's a member of our psychology department.
LaSalle University's Communication Department. Students learn to think and do.
Every semester, communication students create and implement public relations plans for local nonprofit organizations.
And journalism students produce Germantown Beat, an online news source for the local community.
It's great that we can apply what we learn in the classroom in our community.
Philadelphia is the nation's 4th largest media market and has 4 major sports teams.
Being in a major media market allows us to gain great professional experience through internships and co-ops.
The Communication Center is home to the university's cable station.
LaSalle TV reaches over 350,000 homes in Philadelphia and airs mostly student-produced programming.
Our communication department is ranked in the top 10 in North America for relational communication research.
But keeping with the tradition of the De La Salle Christian Brothers, teaching students comes first.
Think, do with LaSalle Communication. Check us out on Facebook and Twitter.
From our campus to the city of Philadelphia. Tune in and watch, because we know you will love LaSalle TV.
Hungry for LaSalle TV?
Check us out on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook. Check out our Twitter. And continue watching LaSalle TV.
Welcome back to Academic Matters. I'm Joe Marbach, the Provost at LaSalle University. In this segment, I'm joined by Dr. Leanne Asiata, who's an Associate Professor in the Department of Psychology. Leanne, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
That's a great pleasure. Leanne, tell me a little bit about your background and how you ended up here at LaSalle.
Sure. So, let's see. So I grew up in New Jersey and went to public school there, and I remember being in middle school and having a short lesson on Freud and sort of being captivated by that. So I think that's when my interest in psychology first developed. So I had a psychology class in high school, and in looking at colleges, I was looking for a small liberal arts education with a college that also had a strong psychology department. So I went to Franklin and Marshall College, which is in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So I had a really strong liberal arts background, and their psychology department actually engaged students, undergraduate students, because they didn't have graduate students, they don't think they still do, in research. So we worked with mice and Skinner boxes and intro to psychology, and did several research projects along the way. So during college, my interests sort of shaped into the plan of becoming a child clinical psychologist. I always had interest in working with children and adolescents and their families, had the interest in psychology and clinical psychology in terms of the mental health piece. So I applied to programs and was accepted into MCP Hahnemann University, which became Drexel, halfway through when I was a student there. So I was making sure I was taking coursework and engaging in clinical experiences that were focused on children and adolescents and families. And after I received my master's, I was offered the opportunity to teach a course. So I taught Intro to Psychology to Drexel students and realized that's what made me feel vital. I was meant to teach.
To be in the classroom.
Right. So I changed my course of study, began getting other clinical experiences sort of to round myself out clinically. In a PhD in clinical psychology program, you spend your final year on an internship. So it sort of works like a medical student residency where you apply to programs across the country, you rank where you interview, the programs rank their applicants, and then a computer matches you. So I spent my final year on Long Island at Long Island Jewish Medical Center, working in different clinical units and with different patient populations. And then after I graduated, I accepted a fellowship at the University of Delaware. So I taught Intro to Psychology there, but they were 300 student sections.
Wow, that's a little bit different than what we do here at LaSalle.
Exactly. So that was, I spent a second year there as a visiting faculty member, and I was doing research and clinical work too, but I was really looking for a place where the focus was on students, where I could get to know my students and really interact with them. We did do, I had a colleague who also taught the large sections, and we did do a project looking at active learning in these large sections and broke students into smaller groups, but it wasn't the same as having a class of between 20 and 30 students. So when the position opened at LaSalle, I applied, and it's been a good fit since. And so even though I'm faculty in the psychology department, the position was mostly dedicated for the master's in counseling program. So I teach the master students.
Okay, so you went from little kids to bigger kids to adults now mostly at this point.
I never thought about it that way, but that's right, yeah.
And we do specialize in clinical training, in clinical counseling, I guess, in particular. What kind of students are you dealing with, and what kind of careers are you preparing them for?
Right, so our master's program has sort of two programs within it. So we prepare students to become licensed professional counselors, and those students primarily work with individuals, with patients and clients one-on-one. And they ascribe to a wellness model, which is a strengths-based model. So whereas other mental health professionals might be focused on reducing symptoms, counselors focus on improving health, so meeting the clients where they are and sort of building resources up and resilience. And then the other program within the master's suite, I guess, is the marriage and family therapy program. And although we have marriage and family therapy students mixed in with the counseling students, most of my direct work is with the counseling students.
So what type of patients then, or is it patients or clients? I know there are fine distinctions within the field, so I don't want to run afoul
there's no, and I think it's really, it's pretty murky. So I think, so technically those who ascribe to a medical model that's focused on symptom reduction would call the individual they're working with as patient. And then client or counselors would call their clients clients. However, I don't know if anyone sort of sticks to that hard and fast.
So are we preparing our students for the gamut of individuals that they might, or do we specialize?
Well, so we're mostly, I would say, a generalist program. So we have students, so in their final year of their master's program, they complete clinical training for a total of 4 semesters. So we have over 100 placements throughout the Delaware Valley region, ranging from outpatient clinics to inpatient hospitals, residential programs. We do school-based mental health. So for children, adolescents, adults, geriatric patients at all levels of functioning. We do have a specialization in addictions counseling. So we have a number of students who help we work in clinics with clients who struggle with substance and behavioral addictions. Like gambling.
Yeah. Now, is there any research component with students in those programs?
So it's not required. So they do take a research and statistics class so they can be a good consumer of the science, and so science can inform their clinical work. And because it's an applied program, the majority of our students don't engage in research, but it is an option. We have a very active department in terms of research.
Right, well, I know you're one of those active individuals. Tell me a little bit about what you've been working on.
Right, so my research area is on mindfulness and self-compassion and related constructs. So it was an interest that developed in graduate school, and mindfulness was becoming sort of a hot construct in the field of clinical psychology.
What do you mean by that?
Sure.
If you've got folks at home there.
Sure. So mindfulness, the classic most popular definition in the field is probably by a researcher named John Kabat-Zinn, and he says that mindfulness is paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. So if you unpack that, it has 2 components. The what is what we do, so it's paying attention, our awareness, both our feelings and physiology and memories and thoughts, so our internal awareness as well as what's going on around us. And then the second component is how we pay attention, and that's with openness or non-judgment or willingness. So in terms of the counseling students, I bring that into the classroom, and oftentimes they're anxious in their first meetings with clients. And so they can sit and try to deep breathe and push the anxiety away, but sometimes the more we push things away, the more it comes back. So how can we sit with those feelings of discomfort without overindulging them or pushing them away? And so that's an example of mindfulness.
Okay. What about that second component about being non-judgmental? Is that more just part of reflection in one's own experience?
Right. I think that seems to be, so from the research that I've done, that seems to potentially be one of the engines that relates to mental health. So individuals who are more accepting of their experience and more willing to come in contact with uncomfortable experiences tend to have better mental health outcomes. And so that component seems, so mindfulness in general is a skill that can be learned and can be developed with practice. And so there's meditation programs actually in the Philadelphia area that someone could go and take a course and then engage, just like playing the piano with more practice. It becomes stronger. So that non-judgment piece, it's learning to sit without pushing it away or like ruminating or overindulging it. And with practice, it's something that someone can develop.
Okay. So now do you work with the students to train them in that area? And then do they apply that to patients, or are patients trying to be mindful?
Right. So I think in the past, I would say maybe 15 years, there's been an increase in mindfulness-based interventions. And so we don't have a course on that in the program right now, but students who are interested, I work individually with them and help them learn which approach they want to use. I do have a research team of about 20 students right now, of undergraduate, master's, and doctoral students who are interested in researching mindfulness, and we have projects going on here at LaSalle and looking at mindfulness and self-compassion and well-being in college students.
What does a research in mindfulness look like? Is it interviewing people, having them surveyed? Are you showing them blots?
The ink blots, no. So when I was in graduate school for my dissertation, I was noticing that there was one measure of mindfulness that was published, but it didn't explicitly include that acceptance component. So I developed a measure of mindfulness for my dissertation, and it was published when I was here at LaSalle in 2008. And since then, it's been translated into Italian, Thai, German, other languages.
So you've kind of written a standard
right.
in some ways of measuring mindfulness.
Right, and there's other measures too that sort of tap into different aspects of mindfulness, but it's called the Philadelphia Mindfulness Scale. It looks at the what and the how, so the awareness component and the acceptance component. So that's in terms of when you're asked about how we measure or how we research mindfulness. So the self-report questionnaire is one of the major ways, but it's problematic in that if I ask you or anyone to complete a measure of mindfulness and ask how aware are you of the sun shining on your face, or how aware are you of maybe the temperature in the room, I'm directing your awareness. And so am I inadvertently increasing one's mindfulness? So we're looking at trying to measure and quantify mindfulness in other ways, maybe through narratives or through observations. That's sort of in the mix right now.
Well, it sounds like you've got a lot more work to do.
Yeah, we sure do.
All right, well, Leanne, thank you. Our
thank
time
you
is
so
just
much.
about up.
Okay.
My guest has been Dr. Leanne Cardassiato, an associate professor in the Department of Psychology at LaSalle University. Once again, my name is Joe Marbach, the provost here at LaSalle. Thank you for watching.